The Bible says that God is close to the brokenhearted, and many of us have experienced that on some level. But I found that it wasn't just being close to the brokenhearted. He came to me. I didn't have to go on some spiritual journey to the Holy Land or go to seminary or do something crazy. It was just ordinary me, as I like to say, with no special skill sets and no special, I don't have a big platform. I'm not some celebrity or major expert on anything. I just was a grieving, normal human, and God came to me, and that changes you.
Hey there, you're listening to the Girls Talking Life podcast, and I'm your host, Johanna. If you're like me, you love time with friends. I always leave feeling encouraged, inspired to try something different, or I've learned something new. So why not continue to grow even when we can't be with our girlfriends? We're not made to do life on our own. So in each episode of this show, I'll bring you a girl and her story to give you refreshing ideas to stir your soul. Let's walk this road together. Are you ready to talk life? Hello, you are listening to episode 101, and today I'm talking to a very special guest and listener of the podcast, Robyn Rison Chapman. If you would describe yourself as ordinary, if you felt like God couldn't possibly use you, or if you're in a season of grief right now, this show is for you. Robyn is a finder of hope and passionate encourager. She was an award-winning journalist and successful grant writer before leaving those careers to spend more time with her family. And it was during a season of family grief that she began to feel God calling her into more faith-filled writing. She is the author of the devotional book, Ordinary Walks with an Extraordinary God. Robyn regularly writes on her blog, hopeanyway.com, and she lives in Southern Ohio with her husband, Derek, and her sons, Jack and Max. Robyn is graciously giving away a copy of her book to a Girls Talking Life listener. That listener could be you. If you are a subscriber to the GTL newsletter, you're entered to win already. If not, there's still time to become a subscriber. I'll be giving away her book at the end of the month. Being a subscriber, you'll also get all the details from the latest shows, plus free goodies, tips on friendship, community, or gathering your girls together. Find the link in the show notes to sign up. Everything we talk about can be found on girlstalkinglife.com. Here is my conversation with Robyn. Hello, Robyn. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm so glad to see your face.
Well, good morning, Johanna. Thank you for having me. I so appreciate it.
I have interacted with you online a little bit. We have talked back and forth, and you even sent me a copy of the devotional that you have written. So I know a little about you, but introduce yourself for those listening.
Well, sure. My name is Robyn Chapman, and I'm, an accidental author, I guess is a great way to say it. I'm a mother of two boys and a wife to my husband, Derek, for 23 years now. I'm a longtime Christian, grew up in the church, former, or as I like to say, recovering journalist. And I left that career, did a little grant writing for a while, and then left that as well, kind of not by choice. I left that to take care of my ailing father and small children at the time. I couldn't have enough time to work and take care of them the way I needed to. So I did that and sort of came out on the other side and have this book to show for it.
You describe your life as being fortunate without much trauma or drama. And you said for the longest time, you just couldn't see how God could use you without some sort of overcoming story. And Robyn, I totally feel this way too. I haven't faced a lot of adversity. So where would you say, us being ordinary as we are, where would you say that God started your story and made it a little more extraordinary?
Well, like I said, I grew up in church. I gave my life to the Lord when I was an early teenager. And it was just, I didn't have lots of trauma and drama, as you mentioned. I used to hear those stories of people overcoming all these obstacles, and they make wonderful testimonies. They're they're fantastic. But I grew up in this Christian home with it was peaceful. I didn't have a lot of extra challenges as far as that goes. Life sort of went okay. I just sort of followed a blueprint, I guess, like many of us do. And I am thankful for God's keeping grace, which is just as amazing as his saving grace.
Yes.
Because that has been so much the story of my life, is just being protected and kept in many ways. And so it really went along as normal without, big ups and downs, until really the loss of my parents. And that's kind of the thing that woke me up. I had lost my mom about 14 years ago now, 14 and a half or so, and didn't particularly handle it all that well, as many people wouldn't. She was my person.
Yeah.
And I, frankly, to this day, am still a little shocked by the fact that she's not here. But I didn't handle that as well as I should have, as well as I would like to have after that. And it was just kind of a struggle. You say things that you regret, you do things you regret. You just don't make all the great choices. You grieve.
Right.
It's just kind of a struggle. And then after my dad died, that's been 3 years ago, a little more than 3 at this point. I just was determined to handle it better. Maybe that was maturity. Maybe that was the prayers of my mom and my grandmother and my great grandmother and so on and so forth. And maybe it was just God's mercy, but it was a simple, I'm going to do better. I'm going to seek God more in this situation rather than just kind of flailing, which is how I sort of found myself after the loss of mom. And that was really it. It was those deaths. And I do like to clarify that the deaths of your parents are fairly normal. It's not like I lost a child or lost a spouse, at an early age. So I don't want to compare that grief, my grief, to someone else's. Everybody's is unique. Everybody's is traumatic to them, no matter who it is, whoever the person is that you love. But I just found that to be sort of the catalyst for me to shift my life and just grow deeper in my relationship with the Lord. I turned to Him instead of some other direction, and it just made all the difference.
He kept you from flailing this time.
Yes, absolutely. 100%. The Bible says that God is close to the brokenhearted, and many of us have experienced that on some level. But I found that it wasn't just being close to the brokenhearted. He came to me. I didn't have to go on some spiritual journey to the Holy Land or go to seminary or do something crazy. It was just ordinary me, as I like to say, with no special skill sets and no special, I don't have a big platform. I'm not some celebrity or major expert on anything. I just was a grieving, normal human, and God came to me, and that changes you. And when you've experienced that, you know it. And how can I not tell someone else? How can I not be so excited? And I'll never get over it. I just can't stop telling people about it. It's just such an amazing thing. And I find it so interesting because it's not like this was new in terms of my knowledge of God. As I said, I've grown up in the church and I've had God answer prayers and things before, but this was just different. It was just different. It was so much closer and so much more real that it totally changed my life and has changed the entire trajectory of my life.
At some point, you began walking. Was this before your father's death?
It was. I had been walking for, I'm not sure, shortly after my second son was born, maybe a year or two after that, just for exercise. I wish I could say it was some greater purpose, but it wasn't. It was just simply exercise. But it had been my habit. This was my time. This was my 45 minutes to an hour of, I'm going to do this every day, to exercise, to just have some peace, to have some quiet. And it became time to organize my thoughts when I was still actively writing, for other people. If I'm doing grants or those other things, it's a great channel for creatives, to walk, to have that physical exercise and to be able to organize your thoughts. So I did that. But then it began to shift as Dad got sicker, and it became a time to pray. And it just simply became an hour of walking and talking to God. I would walk, and I still do it. People ask me all the time, do you still walk? Yes, I do. I did not walk this morning, but I do walk almost every day. But it was simply to talk to God. It became something that I couldn't wait to do every day. It didn't matter the weather. It could be 20 degrees and snowing outside. I'm going anyway, because it has nothing to do with those things. It is time when God and I have a close thing. Like we have, it's when He speaks to me. It's when He talks to me. And I often tell this story. What I was doing after Dad passed was really begging God to not let me go. because I was afraid of the situation that I found myself in after mom, where I just sort of kind of drifted away. And I was, I don't know, terrified of doing that again. And so I just begged God to not let me go, because I didn't know if I had the strength, the personal, fortitude to hang on with all the things I had to do. I had to deal with all the estate things and was just all the added challenges.
Right.
And then small children, and it was a lot at once. And I just didn't know if I could hang on to him. So I just begged him to hold on to me. And the funny, well, it's not funny, it's miraculous, but I was really struggling with this one day, and I was just ugly crying with it. And I came back and I opened up the devotional that I was reading at the time. And the title that day was God Won't Let You Go.
Aww.
It was the exact phrasing even that I had been asking. And I knew if I'm going to pinpoint a moment that changed everything, that's the moment. Because I knew right then he was so very real in my exact moment. It wasn't say a prayer and continue saying and waiting and an answer comes 3 months later or something like that. It was like I was just speaking right to him and he just answered back.
Wow.
I don't know how else to describe it other than I knew right then. That was really the beginning of me really realizing how close to me he was and how caring and loving that he was and how much he cared about me. And so I began a change, I think, in that moment to just say yes to him, to just be closer to him, to seek him out more. And so that's what I began doing, particularly on the walks. And the way that the story kind of goes on is I had been with some friends at a facial party just for some girls, just an afternoon that I didn't even want to be at, but my husband had suggested I needed the time. You need something light to do. You need something with your friends.
Right.
And I went and I ruined everyone's facials because I made us all cry. But they had just asked, how I was doing and how everything was going. And I told them, and I said, this is too much. I'm going to leave and let you all enjoy the rest of your day. And my friend who had hosted the gathering called me the next day and said, we talked after you left and we think you should write it down. Oh, okay. Well, sure. Maybe, I hadn't thought about it. I had never thought about writing anything else down, even though I had been a professional writer my entire life. I just hadn't been writing personal things. So I prayed about it, decided that's probably what I should do, started a blog, wrote that first story down, which is just based on my grief experience. It has nothing to do with anything else other than my personal experience. But what happened was when I wrote that down, it was like God turned on a faucet and I couldn't stop writing. What began to take place was every day as I walked, I'm just out in nature. I am talking to God, and he began to just open my eyes to things that I hadn't noticed before, things I hadn't seen, things I just hadn't thought about. And so I would come back in from a walk and I would have all this stuff in my head and I just had to sit down and write it out. That actually went on for probably a year and a half. And I kind of woke up one day and began to look back and I was like, this is a book. So I put it together and it's a devotional book and it's based on my walks. That's what it is. It is conversations God and I had in our walks or things that he showed me in those walks. At no point did I intend to write a book. At no point during the actual writing of those did I realize it was a book. In fact, Johanna, I look back at it when I realized there was a theme emerging. There were 52 of them, not 51. There were 52. They were done. And I often say it was kind of like walking through a forest or some kind of dark time where you're being very careful. If you don't know where you're going, you're being very careful and taking slow steps. And then it was like opening into a clearing. And there it was. Like, it's a book and I've been writing it with you. So God and I have this book. It's a joke. It's his book. I just typed it. So that's how the walking tied to it. That's how it was just the time. It was something I was already doing. And again, as I look back, I didn't have to do anything. He came to me. I just had to be open. I just had to allow him to work and kind of say yes. And that's what we did.
That is amazing. I love that he answered that prayer with the exact words you needed right away, just exactly when you needed it.
Absolutely.
Wow. So walking, it's a pretty ordinary thing. We all have to do it. Some do it more than others.
Yes.
How long do you feel like you were in this pattern of walking before God really opened your eyes to what he was doing?
I had been walking, I would say, a few years is how long I had been walking, just on the daily, doing the other things. But when I started, probably a year at least, that I had been doing on the daily treks, and there were things that just became other blog posts. They weren't all, walking, but it's when I look back, when he began to tell me, this is a book, there's something more here.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I began to look back, and I was like, oh, there's so many of these that are from when I walked. There's all these. And then when I went back to count, there was enough for a year. And I was blown away. Like, if you were going to purposefully write it, you would do an outline and plan it. And you might do 52. You might not. You might, do 30 days or 60 days or, whatever. But it made sense. And it was there. And then things began to happen. Like, I found the Hope Writers organization, which was wonderfully helpful in terms of just learning what I needed to do, because I had no idea how to put a book together.
You didn't plan on doing this.
No, I didn't. It was, at no point was I planning on doing it. So I did that. I self-published simply because, as you learn, traditionally publishing is going to take a long time. And that's wonderful. I might have a traditionally published book one day. That's possible. I don't know. But I had to get this out. I could not wait to grow a platform and to have a following and, all the things. I had to get this out because I felt almost tangible physical pressure to get it done. Like, I could feel God pressing me to get it done. And so I self-published. On top of that, when I was talking through with the publisher, they asked, I was speaking with a marketing specialist, right, to kind of tell me what you need to do. And he asked me one day, he said, what is your goal? What do you want to do with this book? And I was like, finish it. And he laughed and he said, no, how many copies do you want to sell? And I said, I have no idea. I never thought about selling it. It was never in my brain. Never once was it in my brain. But long story short, it wound up selling much better than a self-published book should. It won some recognition for sales within, with that publisher. And then as a result of that, I got to make a marketing presentation to HarperCollins, which is no small thing.
Mm-hmm.
That was also successful. They helped me market it to other bookstores and stuff in the region. They have given me some counsel on, things to do and how to improve and do all those sorts of things. And again, never once did I plan any of that. And I tell some of my friends, that's kind of like getting a fast pass at Disney World. Like, I got to go to the front of the line and I didn't even know I was in a line, but that's kind of how that happened. And it's all because it was not Robyn.
Yeah.
Robyn couldn't do that. Maybe in 10 or 15 years of hustling, maybe I could do it. That was simply because God was in it, because God ordained it and led me through it. And I was willing and said yes at every turn. And then it has opened up and led to so many other things, like, being interviewed on podcasts. I've had so many speaking engagements. I've been speaking at churches and women's groups and other things. I have devotionals running on a local radio station every day now.
Wow.
I didn't plan on any of it. That's what happens when you say yes to God. And that's what I've been doing. So I don't know where it's going. I don't know if this is something I will do for a long time, but it's completely changed, like I said, the whole trajectory of my life, because I've not gone back to any other work. I've switched entirely into this life, and I have been so busy. I haven't had time to think about anything else.
Well, Robyn, your book is broken up by season.
Mm-hmm.
And since it's fall, that's automatically where I jumped in. And you have an entry called Share Your Story. Girls Talking Life is all about sharing your story and being with other women. And I say that at the end of every episode. So I just wanted to read an excerpt here. You say, I love watching the leaves change color in fall. They can be stunningly gorgeous. There is one tree I pass on my morning walks that had me fascinated for several days. It looked like it was changing from the inside out. Most of the vibrant colors were closer to the trunk, and it was still more green on the farthest limbs. You say, I posted a picture of it on my social media because it was pretty and I wanted to share it. This made me think about the importance of sharing our unique stories, more specifically sharing what God has done for us.
Yes, I can still see that tree. I know exactly where it's at. It's funny, some of those, because at this point, it's been a couple of years since I've written these, and I have to remind myself what they are. But that one I know clearly. I could point to the tree. I know exactly when it was. I could remember the exact day, even going by, watching it day after day. But it did look like it glowed from the inside out. And I thought about it and I thought, well, oh, so many people should see this. This is glorious. This is super beautiful. But not everybody's going to see it, because not everybody's going to walk that way. I mean, the people in my neighborhood that drive that on that street are going to see it, but that's it. So it just was so similar to me of how we are in life, that I'm not going to experience all the things you're going to experience, and you're not going to experience everything I'm going to experience. And isn't that kind of what God means for us to do, is to tell other people what we've been doing or what we've experienced, because we can't experience everything by ourselves. I think that it's absolutely crucial that we share what God has done for us. I think the Bible's pretty clear on that. And Revelations tells us that, that we overcome in part by the word of our testimonies.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to share when God has shown up for us, so that it becomes that map for other people, so that somebody else is encouraged or benefits or learns or is pointed to Christ because of the things that we've experienced. And so that's really how I see it. It has nothing to do with this particular book. It's just a book. If you want to find someone who writes better, you won't have to look far. But this is my story, and God showed up in it in amazing ways, and that can help somebody. And each one of us, no matter who you are, is going to have some sort of story that can point others to God. And I think we're commanded to tell it. We have to do that to help others and point them to Jesus. So I think it's amazing to me that I got a chance to do it myself, to tell some sort of story. And then I'm getting to do it on a little bit bigger stage, I guess, than just telling my neighbors. But if all you have is your neighbors or the people at your kitchen table, that's enough. You don't have to be a pastor. You don't have to be a celebrity of some kind or have a big platform. You can have the people that live in your house, and that's enough. Tell those people, share the story, share what God's done for you. And it has amazing ripple effects that you just can't fathom.
You may never know.
Absolutely. Yeah. I expect most of us won't know on this side of heaven anyway, just how much those stories have mattered.
Absolutely.
It's kingdom work.
Yes. You said that you set a goal to walk 1,000 miles in a year, and you did it. Shortly after that is when the book began to take shape. And you say the real work is done between that first and the last step. Step after step, on the day when it's hot or cold or rainy or thick with pollen, it's just continuing to walk when it would be easier to stop. And that is true of so many things. You didn't have to walk every day.
No.
You did it because you wanted to experience God on your walks.
Absolutely.
And there are so many things in our life that we don't have to do, but we get to do.
Yes. I think I get some benefit. I played sports a lot growing up through high school, that kind of thing. And you learn a lot of discipline through some of those things about continuing to go even when you're tired or hurt or some of these other things. And I think that maybe gives me a benefit on some of those things. But I realized through some of that like my friends wouldn't walk with me often because they said I walked too fast and they couldn't keep up, or they didn't want to walk when it's cold, or they didn't want to walk when it was too hot, or, their allergies were acting up and all those things. And I thought, and it's not their journey. This was a special time between the Lord and I. And there were days when it would have been easier because no one knows, frankly, no one cares if I walk or not on most days. But no one would care if I went to church on Sunday morning either. But I do it because I want to do it, because I see God working and I see God acting and just showing up in my life. I don't want to miss out on it. So to me, it was easy to do, or grew easier to do with the practice, the muscle memory of, I know how much I enjoy this. I know that God talks to me during this time. So you're going to have a hard time keeping me away from it because it becomes such a personal experience. But there were a lot of times when I, had to remind myself on some of those unpleasant days.
Yes.
I think about some days there's a certain, when the wind is blowing a certain direction, there's one long stretch that I walk, and it will just, if it's snowy, or a little bit icy, it would just whip you right in the face and it hurts. We've all been in that kind of experience when the weather is really rough and it kind of hurts your face. And you just put your head down and keep walking. You put your head down as that protection, but you keep walking, because I would rather experience that and be with God than be at home in the heat and, better environment and then be without Him. When you're struggling, when you don't want to go on, you have to remind yourself of the truth of where your strength is coming from. I could just see so many of those lessons, over and over. And it really is, you mentioned that particular devotion, which I saved for the last one of the book on purpose. People cheer when you do that first step. People cheer when there's that miracle to begin with, or when you've given your life to God, people cheer, people clap, everybody loves it. But there's all this hard work in between when nobody's paying attention, and it's easy to give up. It's just easy when no one is paying attention to whether or not you keep going, and when you don't have to keep going. And I think that it's just so crucial that we kind of support each other, that we encourage each other, and we remind each other that those are the days that do count, and that we do have the strength to go through it. And we're all learning something that we can share with somebody else and be somebody else's encouragement in those days, in those times when they are struggling, that they can see somebody else is doing it too. And that's what keeps us all going. And that's how we're moving the kingdom forward.
Yeah. It's not the first step or the last step, but all those ordinary days in the middle doing what we do.
Yes.
I have been reading my Bible continuously for a couple years now, and I feel the same way about that. At first, it was something I needed to make myself do. I needed to become more disciplined with it. And now it's something that I'm really excited to do. I know how alive and active it is, how God will interact with me, how I'll learn something new.
Yeah, that's a great example with the Bible. And I do the same thing. And I have been doing that. I just read it straight through. That's my morning reading time. And I will go back and have different study times at certain points. But in the morning, I get up early before my kids are up for school. I get up early to read it. But that's exactly the same sort of thing when it's different to me each time. And I'm sure you found that too, because it's living and active, that I can read the same verses over and over, and I'm going to get something different each time. It's sort of the same way with those walks. I'm walking in the same path. I walk the same route every day, which I'm sure all my military friends would, not approve of because people can pick me out where I'm going, but I see different things, even though I'm passing the same houses or I am, walking the same path. If you are open and you're willing to take God with you on that walk, you're going to see new things each time. And that's what happens. It's just seeing that life in a new perspective. And we can all do that. We can all take the same path of, we get the kids ready for school and we go to the grocery and we do the same laundry and we do the same ordinary things. But when we take God with us, we see different things in those times, and other people see us doing those things and they get benefit from it too. So yeah, this scripture is a wonderful example of that same thing.
You say that you want people to know God absolutely can and will use your ordinary self to do kingdom work when you let Him. He is active and present and working in our lives. How have you seen this play out, besides the ways that you've already mentioned?
Well, I like to think about the opportunities that I have had since that.
Yeah.
It's given me an opportunity to do kingdom work that I never would have even dreamed, I think, or never thought of in advance or prior to this experience. Again, it's the ordinary life. I'm not doing anything that most of us don't do. It's just that it opened my eyes to some new ways, and it's given me some new opportunity by just saying those yeses, by just simply being open and available. And it's kind of how one yes leads to another. When you obey here, then there are other things. Each new step, there's more maturity, there's more growth, there's more ways to build. And that's really what I've been seeing. And while we're all special to God, there's absolutely nothing special about me in terms of, my skills or anything else. This could be anybody. When you're saying yes, you just don't know where those ripples go. When you are just being obedient to him, then he makes so much more possible, and he does so much more than you can imagine that he will do when we're doing that. So it's building on each opportunity, each step, and it's available for everyone. He's there, he's active, he's working in so many people's lives that if you pay attention, and if you're looking and open for that, you can see him working in other people's lives, and he will work in yours too when you are willing to let him.
Love that, Robyn. I want to transition here a bit and ask for your favorite 5. What are you reading or wearing or doing right now that are your favorite things?
Well, as I mentioned to you before we started this, this was a little bit of a challenge for me to come up with the right 5, but I tried to be a little careful about it. But first, I will say, because I walk all the time, and this book is so much about the walks, my shoes that I walk in are a big, big deal. And I wear Hoka's.
Okay.
I am a stickler about that. I get a new pair about every 5 to 6 months because I put that many miles on them. And so I get them frequently. I have at least 2 new pair a year.
That's my husband's brand.
Yes, that's what I go with. So for those who want to know, Hoka's are the best in my opinion. Second, Bones coffee. I'm a huge coffee drinker, lifelong. I started as a child, believe that or not. But I cannot function in the world without my coffee. Just black. I don't need to have all the frou-frou stuff in it.
Same here.
That kind of thing. So Bones coffee would be on my list. Then it's a little bit cheesy, I guess, but scented candles, particularly when we get into fall and winter. I don't use them much in the spring or summer, but certainly in the fall. I think maybe it's just the smell of the pumpkin or the apple, those fall scents.
Right.
I particularly like, and maybe it's just that it helps usher in the season for me. Words on t-shirts, coffee mugs, my walls, the artwork on my walls, almost everything has words. I have a message board. I don't know. I've always been a word lover. I love quotes. I like word games, word puzzles, all that sort of stuff. So words. It's
very appropriate for an author.
Sure. Yeah. And then finally, I was actually thinking about trying to come up with a TV show or something, but I don't watch a lot of TV. So really what the other thing I came up with was the music apps. iHeart, Pandora, Spotify, any of them. I listen to all of them, but I love, love, love listening to music, listening to worship music or praise music, or it doesn't matter. I listen to a little bit of everything. I have eclectic taste.
Do you listen on your walks?
Sometimes I do. Not always. Sometimes it's straight up prayer time and I just leave it quiet. Yeah. Sometimes I listen to podcasts. In fact, I listen to yours, as I have told you in the past. I listen to this one on my walks sometimes. Occasionally I will listen to, to praise music or hymns, which is weird on walks, I know, but there's something about listening to hymns where you don't hear them so much anymore. To listen to those while you're walking in nature is really an interesting time. But yeah, so any of the ways that make getting music to me easier, any of those are certainly high on my list of favorite things.
Well, thank you. I love those. Very good. Robyn, it has been a treat to talk to you. And I love just everything about your story, how it started because you didn't want to experience what you had experienced with your first season of grief. You wanted it to be different and you clung to God. You asked him to cling to you.
Yes.
And that just turned into something so beautiful and ordinary, maybe.
Yeah.
But when we allow an extraordinary God to use us in the way that fits with his will, we can all be used. We can all be used by him. So thank you for sharing this. It's really powerful.
Well, thank you for having me. And yes, it's the ordinary. He certainly is the extra. And the great thing about that is that we don't have to have the pressure of being extraordinary. There's nothing overly extra about me. I'm good at being ordinary. He can be the extra. So I'm happy to be ordinary.
Yep, we can rest in that.
Yes. No one needs the pressure of the extra.
Thanks so much for listening. I just love Robyn's story and the way that God has shown up in her life. There is nothing ordinary about interacting with the creator of the universe. If you haven't experienced God like this yet, Robyn says to seek him. Start paying attention and say yes to where he leads. If you have experienced God working in your life, tell somebody about it. It could be just the encouragement that they need. After we finished recording, Robyn told me that she was going out to take her walk and was going to listen to an episode of Girls Talking Life. Happy walking, Robyn. All the ways you can connect with her are in the show notes for today's episode. And don't forget to become a GTL newsletter subscriber for a chance to win Robyn's book. Friend, don't let the conversation stop when the show is over. Share your story and start your own conversations with the girls in your life. I will see you back here in 2 weeks. Thanks for tuning in.